Welcome to Healers Enlightened Network. Tonight, our theme for the month is the demons within. And this is webinar 111, and this webinar is on trauma. Oh, what is trauma? There's three different types of trauma. There's acute trauma that results from a single or a stressful or dangerous situation. Chronic trauma, as it says, results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events, like child abuse, bullying, domestic violence. Complex trauma is the result of multiple traumatic events. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, a rape, a natural disaster. Everybody felt trauma from 9/11 across the world. Immediately after an event, shock and denial are usually the first typical things that linger a little longer and produces unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. But there are much more than headaches and nausea when it comes to this. Trauma is subjective, but common examples may trigger a disorder, so to speak, from the abuse, from the neglect, from witnessing violence, from losing a loved one, or like I said, a natural disaster. With trauma, symptoms that last more than a month and are severe enough to interfere with relationships or work is when somebody needs to step in and get some help. And they also, when they step in to do this, they are automatically told that they have PTSD. The course of the illness varies. Of course, we are all unique. So from some people would completely recover within 6 months. Some, it interferes with their daily life every single day. And some never, ever get over what happened. And they also will experience trauma at different events and in times of their lives from just this one trauma, no matter what age it was. They keep experiencing the debilitating symptoms that interfere, and it can happen in a minute. It is really quick. 6 guidelines that principle to trauma-informed approach: always safety. First and uppermost, safety. Trustworthy and transparency. Some people, when they say they want to help, are not the trustworthy or the transparency ones that you need. But people that are in these situations have so many emotions, they just want somebody to listen and somebody to love them. They do need peer support, no matter what age this occurred at. You do need peer support. You do need collaboration and mutuality with the people that are working with you. Remember, empowerment. Let your trauma empower you to help and empower somebody else by choice, if you're able to do that. And also the cultural, the historical, and the gender issues also roll into all of this trauma. It has just been thrown at us. So how do you survive trauma? What should I do? Give yourself time. If it takes weeks, months, years, you eventually have to learn to live with it and accept it. But some do not. When you work with a counselor or with someone like us, with a counselor, they're going to know what happened in detail, every detail that you can remember. They want to have you involved with other survivors in a support group, which is smart to do. Ask for support. Don't be afraid like I was. Ask for support. Take time for yourself and realize it's not your fault, that it's all okay. And you're going to be much stronger when you get past this point. Get yourself into a daily routine to try to get things back to normal. At times you cannot, but please do try. And do some normal things with people. Get out, enjoy your life. One thing I teach people with trauma, and because I had to go through it, and Paulo and I have talked about it, people walk with their head down with their phones in their hands. People need to put those phones away. They need to look up and they need to watch their surroundings at all times. Now, these are the trauma types. We all know about bullying, and that we're going to talk about next month. We all know about community violence, complex violence, disasters, early childhood trauma, intimate partner violence, medical trauma, physical abuse, emotional trauma symptoms, and there are many. Now, what triggers these events after let's say the event has happened and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're just not catching it, something's not right. It is a trigger. It can be a sight of something, a sound, a smell, or you see a thought. You see something that gets you a thought, and that thought takes you right back to that immediate place. And again, that PTSD is triggered, and you're right back in the realm where you didn't want to be in. Therefore, some people don't see it as clearly as the victim sees it. But for instance, if you got this trauma on a sunny day, blue skies and sunny days may make this trigger occur quickly. Now, psychological concerns, there are many. Anxiety and panic attacks, and they happen without any warning. Fear, anger, shame, irritability, obsessions, compulsions, shock. There is just so many emotions, and these are just a few that this person is dealing with. The trauma they survived while others didn't survive it. Have you ever had or heard of, per se, like a family getting in an accident and everyone passes but one individual, and then that one individual has trauma due to being the only one alive in their family that survived? So trauma can be in so many different ways. Suffering from the severe anxiety is things that we can help with. The depression, not able to form close and satisfying relationships because it's really hard to trust, to let down that barrier. Experiencing terrifying nightmares, and they wake you up in a cold sweat. Flashbacks, they are awful to have happen. And when they do, and if somebody's on with you and they're flashing, just have them take a deep breath, reach out, touch their desk, touch where they're at, remind them that they are safe, be there for them. If they need to cry, if they need to scream, if they need to holler, wail, let them do it, let them get it out, because it's a process and it's very cathartic, because a lot don't cry. They take that in on shame for themselves. They think it's their fault for the trauma. It was not their fault. So what is the most common trauma? As we all know, car and truck and motorcycle accidents, bicycle accidents are the ones that are most common cases that end up at the hospital, right? But the injuries that result from a road accident, like fractures and stuff like that, head injuries, they need to go to the hospital. But when people deal with trauma, unless someone sees the trauma and understands it, these people won't get help. They don't know that it's okay to be safe. They don't know that they don't have to be beat every day. They don't have to be abused every day. And we need to remember that when we're working with people, because if you stop to think about it, every single person in the world has had some form of trauma in their life. No matter how big, no matter how small, it is still trauma. So our brain areas that are implicated in the stress of this responsive is the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. So these are the areas that we need to make sure that are all connected, that there's no underlying imbalances within them, that there's no despair anchors, there's no images of themselves, images of the actual accident itself or whatever happened to them. There's so many emotions. Make sure you work with the sensations they're having also, because those can be tied right into that. Traumatic stress can be associated with lasting changes within the brain itself. So make sure the right and the left hemispheres are connected through the syncope, and that both right and left brains are talking to each other. Traumatic stress is associated, of course, with increased cortisol and noradrenaline, but these responses are subsequent to our stressors. That means also when these are so far out that your adrenal glands are exhausted and suffering, you can no longer fight, flight, or response. It's just freeze. So make sure you're helping their adrenal glands. Adrenal glands can be helped with ylang-ylang essential oil. Make sure you test and see how many they need and how many times a day, and make sure you remind them to not go out in the sun with this essential oil bomb because it will get burned. And then check if they need licorice root, but ask them first if they have any kidney problems, because if you have a kidney problem, you cannot be taking licorice root, and some other diseases also, you cannot be doing that. Now, with a child, like I was saying, you will notice in them, if you were to see a child, and us being a light, I can usually tell right away. I don't know if you've ever come across this. Their traumatic responses include so many. They can get very intense and very emotional very quickly over just something really simple, and the parents are going, what's going on, they shouldn't have done that, but they're not realizing or not seeing past what they need to see. A child will get depressed, they will withdraw, their anxiety will be higher, the behavior changes very drastically, and they have a problem with self-regulation because they just don't know now what they're supposed to do, feel, or be. And some of them form attachments that they really shouldn't have to something fake. And sometimes they regress and they lose all their previously acquired skills, attention, their grades slide, and they're kind of set up for bullies at school. So our bodies do remember about trauma and abuse, quite literally, actually. Our bodies, or our subconscious, respond to the new situation with strategies that we have taught ourselves when we have the terrifying or life-threatening trauma. Our bodies remember. Our memory of this is malleable Your body will respond. It will have emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental imbalances. Your body does sense danger. So always listen to what your gut says. And trauma, as we know, some people can deal with it and put it away and they're okay. Some, it doesn't show up for quite some time. And for some, they've locked it behind a little box. And when that sight, that sound, that word touches them in that way, it unlocks that box. And then floods open, and there's all those memories and emotions that they didn't deal with when they were younger. And they don't know how to deal with them now because it is just overflowing. So how do you know if it's really trauma? The psychological trauma, of course, is the shock, the denial, the disbelief, confused. They really have trouble concentrating because their brain is just looping. Always remember, they will be angry, they will be irritable, even like if someone were physically or sexually abused or in an abusive relationship, if somebody come out and touch them, they would cringe, and you would notice that. Guilt, the shame that they feel, the self-blame, that is very big in certain survivors. And withdrawing from others, feeling sad and hopeless, and feeling disconnected, and the numbness they feel inside is very real. And it's very hard to bring them out of that. So how do I stop being triggered? It's easier said than done, but it can accomplish. Use the strategies to start healing the emotional triggers, and we can help with that because we can fine tune it and go into their subconscious where all this is buried and be able to help them when they are ready to work on this. But be aware, have them journal and identify their top, say their top 3 triggers. Some will have more, and after they get rid of the top 3, then see where the next ones are, and keep going through that until there's no more triggers and they know how to handle it. Because if you get triggered, it really does throw you off balance. And track the triggers from the original point to take it back to where it came from. And sometimes that's hard because usually it's in a very young age if it's some form of abuse. To reprogram the negative beliefs. And this is where, you know, the negative core beliefs, the negative limiting beliefs, and all this comes in. And I do have a sheet of that. Let me work through that and retype it, and I'll send that. But the negative beliefs that are inside, these are the ones that have been made up from 0, preconception, to 7, 8 years old. A child is supposed to be formed intellectually, supposedly at 2, but I know that has expanded now. So we have to be careful when we are working with them. And like I always tell everybody, watch their eyes, right? They are remembering a memory. Left, they're fishing and they're struggling. Trigger management, healthy coping skills. Exercising, it helps get that adrenaline, that lactic acid that's built up from feeling this fiery anger inside of you. Allowing their bodies to rest. And with most, it's very hard to allow your body just to relax, to breathe in that relaxation. Therapy or counseling for some is very good, and for others it is not. Meditation is beautiful for trauma, and mindfulness. You can do both, and you can do both at the same time. And remember to always spend time with people who are positive and positively love you. It's very important. So this is the emotional part of the trauma that we can also work with, because this is kind of what they're feeling inside. They feel fragile. So we can ask, what is the deepest underlying imbalance for them feeling so fragile? And then you're going to have underlying imbalances within that. They feel weak. What is the deepest underlying imbalance of why they feel so weak that they cannot stand up? You can put it in several different ways, in several different, change it around. Many trauma victims feel very lost. So you can ask, why are they feeling so lost in life? Have they lost the direction? And they also feel like the world has caved in on them and they are just buried and they can't see their way out. And we can ask this. They feel betrayed. And when you do betrayed, there is going to be so much. And don't forget about the connection of the brain to whatever part and that part back to the brain. But also remember, when trauma occurs, that physical and spiritual part are one. But remember, that tear happens, whether it happens spiritual to physical or physical to spirit. Check that and make sure that's back in on each and every facet, because that does make a big difference. And there can be disconnections in here. Disappointment. It is very disappointed, but the person they are disappointed with most is themselves. Lack of care and support. Because some trauma victims do not speak out, they don't have the care and support that they need. So if you know a friend that needs help, please be there for them. Sometimes just to hear them talk, just to sit and do nothing, just to listen to each other breathe, whatever, be there. They also feel very stuck in life and feel like they can't move forward in any way, shape, or form. The frozen part is also to do with when you have trauma, you literally freeze in place because you really don't want to feel what's coming. So you literally freeze. So you need to ask, what is the deepest underlying imbalance of why the body is freezing, the mind is freezing, whatever part is freezing. And they also feel cold inside. When you've suffered trauma, no matter any aspect of it, it is a very chilling effect inside. And you can ask if they are cold inside and why they are cold inside. And this may give you the image of themselves, the incident, or anything that has to do with the incident. And disconnection from our guidance and our higher purpose, because they feel like they deserved it and they don't feel like they're a child of the divine. It's very hard emotionally. Physically, the trauma, not listening to your own universal guide. That one's a hard one for some, especially for children in abuse situation. They listen, but other people aren't listening or seeing them. Deeply resisting change, because change is good. Needing a wake-up call. With some people, they are so lost inside this deep, deep hole of depression. They need what is called a wake-up call to bring them out of the depression, to make them realize your life is worthy, you are enough, and bring them the love that they need. If we're going to take negative stuff in, put positive stuff back in, so that subconscious has positivity to flow back into. Because remember, the more negative we take out, the more positive flows in. Constantly limiting yourself by allowing negative thinking to take over. And this happens daily for trauma victims. It can be, you can be watching something on TV and boom, there's something that brings you right back to it. And then all of a sudden, all the negative thinking comes back in. Every time, if you have a client that does this, if you have a negative thought, write 3 positive thoughts and keep a journal of it to keep positive flowing. And it takes a while for the brain to be trained, but you can train the conscious brain. Now, the big thing that people of trauma do is self-sabotaging because they feel that they deserved it. You do not deserve it. Nobody deserves it. And I better stop. And I will stop there with the screen share. Now, in the handout, did y'all print off that handout?
Yep.
Okay. Did you have any questions about it? There are 20 on there. I thought that was quite a bit, but I thought we needed more for it because trauma is such a big thing that people really don't talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. If you have any questions about anything else, I know I went through it probably fast. Boy, there is a lot of pages of this, isn't there? But I thought it was really neat when I saw the tips for releasing stress and healing trauma, because we all feel stressed every day anyway. It's just a part of life nowadays. Let's feel stressed, unless we can just go whoosh and take that Reiki right down with us and bring it down. So, any questions? There was a lot. I threw a lot at you.
So the people that is having like a very severe anxiety, of course, is trauma.
Yes.
And
But at times, though, Paula, they don't realize, they just know it's anxiety, and some of them don't realize that it's from a trauma. So like when you're working with somebody that has extreme anxiety and it goes back to a childhood memory, remember, I mean, you can silently ask yourself, was this child molested? Was this person molested, raped? But do not say it out loud, because it will send a world of whew all over. We plant that seed of that age, and then when the subconscious feels safe, they will open up to you. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes. Yes. But for example, in my case, that I'm working with someone with very severe anxiety, it's not exactly from childhood. It's when she was a teenager. And
Was
that
she raped?
was start for a drug that she ate in a brownie. But perhaps she was raped and she don't know that.
Now, if she was, do they have roofies? Do they have those things? Was there a roofie in the brownie?
It was a drug in the brownie, and she ate the brownie. That drug was like a TSH, I think it is.
Oh, okay. It's a drug.
Yes, a drug. And since that moment, I mean, she is 66, but she has crazy levels of anxiety. And I have been working a lot with her, with everything. And it's better, but still.
Make sure everything is connected to the brain and the brain connected back. But if it happened so long ago and there was a drug involved, she's not going to remember, no matter how much. I mean, something may pinpoint her that it'll bring it out and she'll go, oh Lord, now I know. But she may not remember. Some of them lock it so far behind that door. I mean, I locked mine behind that door, Paulo, for over 40 years until that door came swinging open. And it wasn't fun. So for her to be 66 and that to happen at a teenager's,
19.
I mean, unfortunately, those things happen all the time. And I don't understand why people are not more aware, why children are not more aware. They just go to parties and think it's cool, it's okay, we're hanging with the gang. But bad things happen all the time. all the time. And kids just aren't aware, or just they trust so easily. And it was hard. It is hard when you're a teenager and you're hanging out with all your friends and you've got to do what they do, or you're not allowed in the group or whatever. I mean, is it that way where you are, Paulo?
Well, yes, I'm at the point that I have worked with a lot of things, and always we go back to the 19. I mean, always something takes us back to the 19, but I'm working with brain disconnections. Actually, today I was working with the vagusness again.
Did you time jump her back to age 19?
Time jump?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean with time jump?
You have her go inside herself, breathe very, very deeply. You breathe with her to get her out and get her up, ask her to come up to her super subconscious. And then you tell her to come back just a little bit earlier, tell you what she can remember about age 18. And then move a little bit forward. Do you have any remembrance? Like when you ask about this at age 19, did it involve another person? Was it a male or a female? What were the emotions being felt at that time? The emotions will give them up. And then it will more than likely trigger. I time jumped a young lady just a couple weeks ago because her anxiety was through the roof. And she goes, I don't know what this is. And I said, I've only done it a few times. Are you game to do it? And when she went back, she just started bawling. She didn't even get it out. I know what it was. I know what it was. And finally, she cried and she cried and she cried. And she goes, oh, thank you. I never thought it would ever go away. And she is finally not having panic attacks after all this time. And she's been having them a long time. But she was raped. And she didn't. And so she goes, I want to know more, Cynthia. I want to know more. And I said, oh, God, I already know what's going on. Okay. So was this with this, with this? And then she started, when we time jumped back, she started naming boys. And she goes, wait a minute. Is it this person? And I said, yes. She goes, oh, my God, I know what happened. And it was very, for me, but we both ended up crying before we were off that call. But that was beautiful. And she got a hold of me the next day and she goes, I have never slept so peacefully in all these years than what I have last night. She said she felt like bricks were taken off of her shoulders and off of her head. And she finally was able to look in the mirror and not see something creepy. Now that's big. But remember, we have the power to do that. We have the power to bless these beautiful souls, and we have the power to help them. If ever you get stuck or in a problem or can't figure something, don't hesitate. Reach out. We are all unique in our niches of what we do, and we all have so many things under our belts that we'll find a way. We'll find an answer. If I have to dig through my science books, I'll find an answer. But I will find an answer for you. Okay. I don't know what time we're sitting at here. But if there's any more questions, Tammy, do you have any questions? I know that was a lot.
It was a lot. I don't right now, but I'm going to read through it again because I did take notes, and
okay.
I may have some.
Okay. Do you want me to have, because I didn't have the slides printed off, do you want me to make that a printable? Do you know what I mean? Or do you just want to be able to go back and look at the slides? That's a lot to print off, that many slides.
That is, yeah.
That's a lot of slides.
Yeah, I'll just go back. And I took notes, but.
Okay, okay. And I will also, let me make myself a note on the one to make sure. And I bet that was on the one printed up. Oh, it was on one of those. Let me write a note to get the core stuff. Now, like I said, I'm going to have to redo it. This is part of the way they do T3, but it's not all of it.
Okay.
I've got all the aspects, but we can learn together to teach ourselves how to do it because I have the paperwork to do it. I just
Okay.
haven't taken the course.
Oh, wow.
That would be great.
As you know, the more we share, the more we grow, and the more we grow, the better our clients' health will be, the better we will be, and the bigger light will shine. We're blessings. We're all children of God. And I just remembered we didn't pray at the beginning.
It's true.
I'm sorry. So let's pray now. Please bow your heads for me. Heavenly Father, we thank you so gratefully for being with us here tonight. Oh, thank you. We did have 20 archangels. God bless you for telling us. Thank you. Thank you. We ask you to be with every living soul who suffers trauma each and every day. We ask you to watch over them, to bless them, to bring them what they need. We ask you to please bless us and show us how we can help them. We thank you for your guidance, your love, and your patience. And we are so grateful for everything you do for us. Amen.
Amen.
Namaste, ladies.
Namaste.